everyone, I'm Rebecca and welcome back to my sewing room. This week's video is probably going to be a pretty short one because I am going to be finishing up the 18th century pastoral project finally, and I am in like crunch mode for this because I have basically one day that I can shoot this because of weather. Welcome to Seattle. So if you have not been following this project, I have a link to all of the previous videos down in the description below, but this is week, I want to say 5 now on this project, and I just have a little bit left. So we are so close to finishing this, and I have to shoot these pictures tomorrow because it is the only day that's not raining this weekend. So that means that all of this has to happen like tonight/tomorrow morning when I also have our final dress rehearsal for Titanic. Luckily, there's really not that much that has to happen left. Unfortunately, I think pretty much everything that does have to happen is hand sewing related. So I'm going to attempt to kind of like prep some of this so that I can take it with me and maybe do a little bit of it backstage. I don't have a ton of offstage time, but like every second counts when you're in crunch mode, right? So the first thing that I want to do is I am going to prep a fichu. Now I have all of these scraps of my cotton voile left, and I was a little worried that this wasn't going to be enough, but I pulled out the American Duchess 18th Century Dressmaking Guide book, and on page 48 is a fichu, and their fichu is just triangular like that. So I took this, laid it out on the floor to see, do I have enough left to do it? And I do. So basically I am going to cut like here. So we've got like straight edge here, straight edge going across here, and then the diagonal will be down here. I can't like hold all of that and show you, but I think hopefully you get the gist of that. So I'm going to cut that out and I'm going to press hems into it. And then I really do want to hand sew this because machine sewing is super obvious on this fabric. So my goal is to hand sew those hems backstage of the show tonight, of rehearsal tonight, and hopefully that will be done, because that means that the only other things that have to happen on this are for bows to be added in a whole variety of places. So luckily, between work and rehearsal a couple of days ago, I had enough time to run to Joann's and pick up some pink ribbon. I actually brought this all with me, which is why it is totally falling off the dress form here. And that way I could get a color match to this pink ribbon right here. I was originally going to use some silk fabric scraps that I had just like left in my stash that were kind of very small scraps. I was going to pink the edges, etc. But honestly, it was too like red of a pink, and it just did not go with the trims that I've already put on here. So luckily Joann's had these two. Now this one is actually, I think both of them are wired ribbons. I'm not sure how I feel about that. I may test keeping it. I may take the wire out. Usually with a wired ribbon, you can actually take the wire out of it. You will often see little wires poking up. Hopefully you can see that right there. There's that tiny little wire. And a lot of times when you are looking to take those wires out, you can literally just hang on to them, and it's almost like you're gathering up the ribbon here. This is a really great way to make like ribbon rosettes and stuff too, which heck, I mean, I could do. I'm thinking I'm gonna go with bows, but you can pull this up and you can then just like cut the wire. Do it with a crafting scissors. You don't have to have like a wire cutter or anything. I mean, you can see just how fine that wire is. You can barely see it at all. But yeah, it's a great way to do manipulations of ribbons, or if you want to remove the wire altogether, it is an easy way to do that. Do be careful, because if you saw my Felicity video, some ribbons don't take well to taking their wire out. I've never had a problem with the type that you get at Joann's, like the Offray brand. Usually those wires come out just fine. So I am most likely going to take the wire out of this narrow one, because my plan for this narrow ribbon is actually to go around this gathering point right here. So if you remember from the last video where I was making the sleeves, this is just sewn to the inner layer of the sleeve there. So it is a fixed point, and I want the pink to go around that, and then I want a bow like on the, probably this side of the arm. I want a bow there. I am also planning to put bows on the shoulders. Most likely all of the bows will be out of the wide, but we're gonna have shoulder bows, bows on the arms, bow on the top part of the stomacher here. This one is going to be like a quad bow, so there's going to be 2 sets of loops, and I'm planning to use one of these little vintage rhinestones in the center like I've been showing you on my tester bow here. This is a much wider ribbon though. I'm glad that I found something narrower. And then I am also going to have bows on the pickups for the skirt. The pickups are the one thing that I'm not really positive about yet, because honestly, I would love to be able to wear this down as an option, to wear the skirts down. But when I've done pickups before, I've done them in 2 different ways. One of them is where you have a ribbon literally affixed to like the waistline out here, and another one on the inside. You go and you tie them together and you have a pickup. The other one is where you have a button here and you have like a ribbon loop from the underneath, and then you can go button that up and put the loop around the button basically, and it'll pick that up. So those are kind of the 2 that I've seen, the 2 methods. I'm sure there are many other methods for how to do pickups like this, and it might be that like once I'm done with my hemming my fichu that I look into a couple of other methods, because I don't want ribbons hanging down, and I also don't want the button there. Like, that wasn't ever in my plan to do buttons. And I want bows, big bows, like fixed in place bows, not tied in place bows, to exist. But I don't know how to get all of those wants all at the same time. So I have to figure that out very, very quickly. If I do ribbons, I almost think it might be fun to use my floral trim as like the ribbon pickups instead of, you know, like the plain pink ribbon. I just really love incorporating this trim, and if you remember last week, I put it down along the ruffle too, which you can't really see that well. I mean, I know you can't see it at all right now, but because of the ruffle floppiness, you can't really see a lot of this, so it would be great to incorporate this more into the skirts in some way or other. So I'm gonna stop talking because I have so much to do and I have to get going to the theater pretty soon. I'm gonna go ahead and cut out that fichu. I'll show you what the shape looks like, and gonna press it for hems, and then I will be doing some hand sewing this evening. So instead of going for the measurements in the book, I'm attempting to kind of maximize the space that I can get with this fichu, or the total amount of fabric that I can get with this fichu, even though I have this really, really weird cut. So I had one edge that is a selvage edge. That's the bottom down here. And then this top piece right here, it kind of like dipped in and went off like that, but I had a low point just about here. So from that low point, I actually tore off the edge, so that is now a straight edge too. Then I'm hoping this works, and I have no idea if it will, but I took that straight edge, folded it so that it would match the selvage edge, and down here it does go off, but I'll just cut that little bit of excess off. And then I decided to just try and draw a line from the edge where the selvage gets to, because now it cuts off right there, draw a line there across to as far as I could because of this little notch coming in here. Now again, I have no idea if this is going to work, but I'm hoping that when I cut this line, I will wind up with the large diagonal portion of this fichu. It worked! Here is our triangle piece for the fichu. I have not yet cut off the actual selvage edge here. I am going to do that before I hem it, but as you can see, this makes a nice little fichu. Now, the one in the American Duchess book has a slit in the back of the neckline. Doesn't explain why it has a slit in the back of the neckline, and I don't understand the point of that slit, so I'm not going to do it because I don't know why it's there. But that is basics of a fichu right here, and now I just have to hem all of the edges and then I will have a finished fichu. All right, friends, we are down to the wire. So last night at rehearsal, I was able to get 2 edges of the fichu hemmed. I got the big neck edge and I got one of the other edges. The other one still has to be hemmed. I don't know if that's gonna happen by the photo shoot today. We'll see. So what is left are all of the bows, and I also realized I actually have 2 hooks and 1 bar that need to get put back on too. So let's get into bow making. So first up, we're going to remove the wire from this narrow bow because I honestly don't think that I want the wire anywhere in this narrow bow. And this is going to be what goes around the sleeves. So as you can see, I'm just pulling it up kind of like I'm gathering. I need enough at least out to go around both sleeves. I could potentially do this on both sides at once, but I'm just going to focus on one side at a time, kind of get as much as I can out of here, and then cut it. So I got a pretty good amount out from that. I think the wire is starting here, so I think that might be enough for both sleeves. Let's take it out of the other side though. Then with the ends, I always like to give it a clean cut, and then I melt the ends. Which means that they won't unravel any further. So now before I can actually attach this band around the sleeve, I need to figure out where the bow is going to go. So I have this on the dress form. I'm pretty certain I want the bow to be about here. So not actually where I pinned this. I'm gonna have to move this over because I want the join in this ribbon to be underneath the bow. So it's gonna wind up being about there. But I have to decide what kind of bow I want. So at first I held up a 2-part bow, like your standard bow where there's 2 little bits right here. And it just kind of looked a little flat. So then I made 2 and 2. I just have this pinch. This is literally just ribbon that I have pinched together right here. And I'm now holding this up, and I think this looks so much better. I think that's a good size. It's a good like amount. So I'm gonna go with this 4-part bow. And I know that from where I am right here, this is a good length. So basically I am going to cut this end bit right here, make 2 of these that are the same length. And honestly, at this point, I might use hot glue, or I might just do a couple whip stitches, put that together, and then I will whip stitch this, probably with really obvious looking stitches because I'm short on time, but like big, actually I'm gonna do running stitches, big running stitches around. I'll stitch that in place, stitch that over the top, and then I may or may not put one of the little rhinestones on top, I'm not sure. So this is actually the middle bodice bow, but this is the same sort of thing. Basically, I joined together the backs on the machine, so the 2 ends, and now I am just taking a few whip stitches here while I have this like pinched in my hand so that I know that I like the look of it. And it doesn't even need to be the same color thread because we're going to cover over this. I actually didn't even knot my thread at the end. I just didn't pull it all the way through because my hands were already holding this and I didn't have the hands to knot it. So I am just, again, putting a few whip stitches into here just to hold this in place. I think that should be about good. So I will tie off, and then this is going to get wrapped over with more ribbon. So here is our right now very messy looking center ribbon. And then what I'm planning to do is actually use the narrow ribbon to then go over this like that, because I think that looks really nice and neat for the bow. So that's what the bow looks like with the center portion sewn on. You can see there's just a couple of stitches holding that in place because I was almost out of thread. But now what I'm going to do is I am going to put this little rhinestone onto the center, this time with matching thread. And then in the same go, I am probably going to go ahead and just attach it into the bodice. is what it looks like from the front, and then this is those giant whip stitches from the inside. But basically when I sew a bow down, especially a large one like this, I try to catch kind of all the corners of the center section. So I have stitches here going across here, and then down here going across and here, holding all of that in place. For these plus sign ones, what I've done differently is that instead of wrapping the medium ribbon over around the top, I actually went and I took the smaller ribbon that I used for the lacing in the front, and I just kind of tied it around, doing one bit this way, one bit this way. I literally just tied it in a bow in the back. That was after I stitched it. So you can see the thread is actually still attached there. I already knotted off the thread, and the back can look as ugly as it wants to. Now I'm going to put one of the other rhinestones onto the center of this bow, and then this bow will be ready to go on the sleeve. So I actually decided that for the sleeve trim, I would do a layered trim and do both of the floral and also the pink kind of medium width. I literally sewed these both on at the same time with a long straight stitch on the machine. And I think it looks really, really nice. So I am down to about an hour left at this point. I have to make one more of these for the sleeves, sew on both of them, and then I have to figure out, oh, I still have to do the shoulder bows, the hooks and eyes that are missing at the front, and then figure out how I'm doing up the back of the skirt. Now, I did do some research on that last night. I looked into if there were any other options than what I already told you about to pick up the skirts. And the two that I had mentioned before were having the button with the loop coming from underneath, or having the two ties coming from both sides and tying at the bottom. The one other method that they would use was a series of like little rings or so inside of the skirt, and then you could bring the string or ribbon or whatever up through those rings and fasten them up that way. I definitely do not have time for that option right now. And in fact, I think I may do kind of a stopgap measure here since we only have an hour left. And I think what I'm probably going to do is sew it in place for today, and then probably do that ring method for later, because I still just don't know that I love the idea of putting buttons on the back of it. And then of course the other part of that, actually, I guess the fourth option, is that I think the ones in general that did have the bows up there, you see them in like fashion plates a lot, but you don't tend to see them in extants. I found this one extant that has the bows, and what's going on in this one is that this is a button loop style, but the bows are actually part of the trim around the bottom. So you can see that there's like a ruffle going on here, and then there are two bows like kind of incorporated into that ruffle. That is where they are brought up, and so then you see the bows sticking in those general areas. But when we look at the fashion plates like this, there's no evidence of loops or anything like that. I think these are sewn in place. And so for today, I'm gonna sew mine in place and hope that that will work. Honestly, it might come down to that I have to pin it in place. We'll see, which isn't the worst thing if I'm gonna undo it to pin it in place, so it's not the end of the world. So I'm gonna go ahead and make the other one of these, sew those on, and then let's figure out the shoulder bows first. So I'm having a bit of a dilemma here because I am nearly out of that ribbon that I bought, the wider ribbon. It was only a 9-foot spool. I thought that would be enough. It's proving not enough. So I do have the wider ribbon that I already had in my stash, which is really a very good match. It's not wired, but it's a pretty good match. And I sewed together the two lengths of it that I had, because one was pretty short and the other one was not quite long enough to do like two of the bows for the back. And it should be enough to get me the two bows in the back. I want them to be kind of the squinchy, like 4-pointed bows, or even just kind of like squinchy bows. So that should be enough, which means that I may possibly have enough to do the shoulder bow situation. Now that said, when I'm looking at my inspiration image here, you can see that there are multiple bows going on, because I did at first try to do this with just one bow and it looked really doofy. So then I kind of took my ribbon and made like two bows up here. There's not much left in between the two is the thing. So I would need to be able to get basically 4 bows out of what I have left, which is only this much right here. So not a lot. So they're gonna have to be pretty small bows. I did also try it with like the medium width bow, and it looked stupid in that width. So I need to be able to do it out of like this one here. I just don't know that I can get 2 sets of bows out of what I have left. So I'm going to experiment a little more, hope that I can do it. We're also running pretty short on time. I've got about like 20 minutes left until I have to start getting dressed. So yeah. So for these bows, I cut that length into fourths. So I have 4 of these. I'm putting these right sides together, sewing a little seam at the join right here. And I'm doing the same thing for these little loop arounds for the center. So I'm actually going to sew them on the machine and then basically just slide them over and stitch them in place really quickly. I am, as you can see, melting the edges of all of this so that it won't fray. Again, there's no wire in these little loops, but there is wire in the big loops. So I'm going to go assemble all of that together, stitch them on the shoulders, and we will have shoulder bows. Shoulder bows are on. I also stitched them together here, but otherwise I just started with the seam since it's not quite at the top of the shoulder. It's a little bit farther back. Started there, sewed corners on, tied off, went to the next one, sewed the corners on, basically laid it out so they touch end to end, and then I sewed them together. So those are done. And yeah, I think we're going to be pinning up the skirts today. I'm about 25 minutes past when I wanted to start getting ready, but the butt bows are on. So you can see shoulder bows, butt bows. Let's go get dressed. So I'm all dressed. I know my hair looks weird, but this part's going to be under my market bonnet. But I am really concerned for a few reasons. One, I don't know if my hair is going to fit in the car. So I'm about to find that out. 2, I lost a whole ton of time because Dora decided while I was getting dressed to bring a bird in the house right into the sewing room. I tried to get it out of the sewing room at the window. While I tried to do that, it then flew into some other room. So my other concern is that there's still a bird in my house because I spent some time trying to find it, could not, opened up all the windows. Maybe it flew out, maybe it didn't. But now all the windows are closed and I have to leave and I won't be back until like midnight, and there's a bird that's gonna be in my house potentially for like 9 hours. So that's fun. Oh my God, I'm so mad at my cat right now. And I lost a ton of time. I am probably an hour later now than I wanted to be leaving, which means there's also gonna be traffic, so even less time. So I really hope that I can get the shots that I need to in what might be less than an hour now of shooting time. So I'm gonna get out of here and hope that I fit in the car. I'm going to attempt to film my outro here because it is quiet here at the moment. Hopefully no cars go by or anything like that. Overall, I am quite happy with how this has turned out so far because I definitely do need to fix the bustling up in the back for the polonaise, but for now, good enough for safety pinning that part. Everything else I'm very, very happy with, and I will obviously sew that in place before I go and wear this again. So that means that this is finally the end of this project. I know I have been working on this absolutely forever. Hopefully you have enjoyed this entire saga. If you liked this video, please go ahead and click the thumbs up icon. And if you'd like to see more videos like this from me, please go ahead and click subscribe and the little bell icon to be notified every time I post a new video. I do post videos here on YouTube at least once a week, if not twice a week, with my sewing vlogs like this out on Tuesdays and other costuming content out on Saturdays, but I post every day over on my Instagram, so please go follow me on Instagram. That's at Lady Rebecca Fashions. And if you'd like to help support all of the work that I do on this channel, I do have a link to my Patreon and my Ko-fi down in the description below, or you can send me a super thanks right here on YouTube. I'd also like to give a special shout out to my wonderful Edwardian level patrons, Sharon, Mirage, Laura, Jean, and Janelle. Thank you all so much for joining me today. I hope you all have a wonderful week, and I will see you very soon in my next video. Happy sewing!